Hello and welcome to the Two Gals and a Mic podcast. I'm your host, Sue Curver, and on today's show, I'm sitting down with Alex Mufson, who's a serial entrepreneur, a coach, a licensed clinical social worker, and a pioneer in the world of human design. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was quite the intro. I appreciate you having me here.
I'm excited for you to be here, and I'm really excited to chat about your entrepreneurial success and its correlation to human design. But before we do that, I think it's important to start by diving into your origin story. Tell us a little bit about your background and the extreme, unexpected challenges that launched you onto your current trajectory.
Right down the river from where you are is where my first business was born and raised. And I was an animal behaviorist, and I focused primarily on horses as well as some dogs. And I had a big training facility, and I was traveling all over the country teaching. And that was absolutely my life's work, my life's passion. And in my mid-20s, I suddenly started having very odd neurological symptoms and was hospitalized in Chicago. I traveled all over the country trying to find diagnoses and never got a diagnosis for that. I was put on experimental medication. I kind of went through the ringer, and I went from a extremely physically capable professional athlete to someone who at times walking was really a challenge. In those early years, nobody could tell me if I was going to live or die, much less if I was going to be able to stay walking, if I was going to become paralyzed. And I realized really quickly that my life was very much dependent on this relationship with my body, that my body would just do whatever I wanted it to do. And all of a sudden, it did not. I really faced a lot of my own relationship to death and to certainty, and a lot of things that do come with age for a lot of people had to be packed into not a very long time for a 24-year-old kid. In the time I was, I think, 24 to 27, I continued training horses, and I just got sicker and sicker because my body was not able to do the work that I was doing. I did a lot of therapy during that time to kind of come to terms with the uncertainty around the future with my body. Ultimately, I walked away from that business. In that process of making that shift, I realized that my business wasn't built to take care of me. But the problem is when something totally unexpected happens, like an undiagnosable brain disease, my business was not there for me. It couldn't operate without me putting copious amounts of energy into it. I didn't have the bandwidth at that point to think differently. And so I walked away from a business that was making me money. That has been a blessing, and that I've moved into so many new chapters in my life. But that was pivotal in like changing how my relationship to work looked. Without that, I don't think what my businesses look like now would be at all possible.
I want to talk about something that you just mentioned, and it's this idea of mortality. You told me once that you went from not being deeply rooted and connected with a sense of mortality to you actually tapping into purpose and then building a seven-figure business from the ground up. Why did you continue on an entrepreneurial journey? Why did you not take a safer path and go work for someone?
I had a lot of people who had been working with me through their horses and had over the years asked, hey, can we sit with you without our horses? And at the time I was like, I'm a horse trainer. No. When, leg functioning became something that I wasn't sure was going to be forever, I started thinking, that's not a bad idea. If these people will pay me to sit with them without the horse in the ring, that would probably be way more suitable. So I went back, I got a master's degree, and you have to do field placements and then postmaster's licensure hours to be accredited with the state. And that requires working for someone else. So I did end up working for someone else. As an adult, it was my only non-entrepreneurial job. And I'm glad I had that experience because it clarified for me even further that I am born to be an entrepreneur. There was no question, even through that experience, that I was going to go back to self-employment. The bigger answer is I feel very strongly that I was meant to build businesses. And that's a weird thing to say, except that I didn't have an imaginary friend. When I was 3 years old, I had an imaginary business. We had the last remaining living woolly mammoth, and I had an assistant and flights to catch. And I remember it very clearly because I remember being so angry with my mother for not taking me to the airport. But I was 3, so I do understand that dropping a 3-year-old off at O'Hare to see if she'll make it to her woolly mammoth is not okay. That is, I think, the truest version of myself. And I think what the crisis of illness did actually required me to move a little bit away from myself in order to find that safety of finding a paycheck and a like, quote unquote a real job while I finished my master's and my licensure work. It just made it so much clearer that I was abandoning a part of myself when I did that. And I don't regret it because I loved the work I did. I really appreciate the clinical training that I have. It's crucial to the type of entrepreneurship I do now, but it's not who I am. I'm the 3-year-old with the woolly mammoth.
I love that you talk about the truest version of yourself because I mentioned in the intro that you're also a pioneer in the world of human design. And that idea of the truest version of yourself and human design are very much correlated. Tell us a little bit about that. What is human design and how does it play a part in how you actually do business?
I had nothing to do with building the system. The system has been around for a number of decades, but it is still relatively new in the world of systems. And it has allowed me a framework for entrepreneurship and then for guiding others through entrepreneurship that focuses on actual alignment as a person and centering ourselves and our own needs. The systems that we are born into, like capitalism and patriarchy, really discourage us from doing. Human design is it's like a combination of astrology and quantum physics and some other sciences, and it provides sort of a blueprint for who you are. Our blueprint, or our it's called design, is based on when and where we were born. And so it's fixed, though the rest of the world isn't. In human design, the goal is to be in the body and let the body lead through the terms they use are strategy and authority, which means this is how we make our decisions in alignment with ourselves. That really forces us to get out of our heads. And I think that's what I love about it because I do feel deeply connected to the land, and through the course of illness became very connected to my body. And human design feels like a framework. It's a mechanics practice. It's not like a spirituality in that you don't really have to believe in anything above you. You are just learning mechanics about how to engage with the world. Without going back and appropriating other people's cultures, there's not a way to really like fit into a greater system. There's not a framework that was built into my life, at least. And human design really offers that. It's not religious. There's no values assigned to everything. It's just, these are the mechanics of how I work, and these are the mechanics how the people around me work, and this is how I can best engage between them. It's helped me do only what I should be doing. And that frees a business from this over-functioning enmeshment that a lot of business owners, including myself in that first business, create, that makes it so that horse trainer gets sick and she's got to dump her business because the business totally relied on my energy. I now know that that was as deeply not aligned a business as I could have created for myself. And that's why it didn't support me. And so when I went about starting the most recent business that you mentioned that went 0 to 7 figures, very quickly I adopted a human design framework for me and everybody else that touched it. And we were all just so dialed into what we were doing that the synergy just exploded.
Let's dive a little bit deeper in this. My human design energy type is a manifesting generator. In simple terms, for our listeners, I'm a creator who needs to do many things at once. And I would say that that definitely fits me to a T. What is your human design energy type, and how has knowing this information helped inform decisions that you've made, both personally and professionally?
I'm a projector, and projectors are about 20% of the population. One of the big differences between a projector and a manifesting generator like yourself is one of the centers that produces a lot of energy, the sacral center. Projectors don't have inherently to themselves. Human design calls it defined centers versus like open centers. So the open centers, you're gaining that energy from the outside world. And then the defined centers, you're gaining that from internal. The sacral in a projector is totally open. And so projectors often find themselves very burnt out and very sick, like me, because they are taking in other people, their energy resources in that, amplifying them, thinking that they're their own, and then hurting their bodies because that's not actually inherent to us. What is inherent to projectors, and that has been really valuable to me to really lean into, is seeing and providing vision for those who invite us to do so. So once I figured that out, and I figured that there's this synergy between sacral beings, the ones that have that defined energy center like you, which is just generators and manifesting generators. You guys build stuff. That's your talent. Projectors see stuff. And so there's this beautiful synergy. Once I realized that we were stronger together and that a couple people with this built-in energy who really felt passionate about an idea that I saw and really were asking me to see and guide them could do so much more with my idea than I could because they were craving that build. There's like a little bit of ego death for people that are projectors because we just want to do everything ourselves and when we're not aligned. And once I realized that actually I was much more productive if I tapped into working with people who had their own energy source and who simply believed in what I saw, that we could move mountains together. And so my business is sort of layered with projectors doing the seeing. We've got some forward-thinking manifestors, and then we've got some generators and manifesting generators who put the pedal to the metal and they amplify things times a million. And that has just been the most beautiful, rewarding relationships. And it makes business not feel like business. It makes it feel like we're all like doing what we're here to do.
Is there a human design energy type that really lends itself better to leadership or CEO positions or entrepreneurship?
That's an interesting question because I think it just depends on how you set your support structures up. I have some beautiful generator and manifesting generator business mentorship clients who are the CEO of their business and have scaled to 7 figures. They usually have a projector in their life, whether it's their partner or a business partner or a mentor or a therapist. They usually have someone who is offering that in the same way that I have projector clients that are also the CEOs of their world, but they have right hands that are generators and manifesting generators. We see manifestors not always wanting to lead, but they have a lot of ideas and a lot of initiation. And so they can be really great leaders in a different way. And then reflectors who are just sponges for the energies of the world. And it's so beautiful. I also have reflector clients. They can lead as well, but they desperately need space to detox from all the energies that they're absorbing. So I guess it can all work, but if you're a builder, you better find a seer to be on your team. And if you're a seer, you better find some builders, right? So it's about creating a team. And I think that's why a lot of people are discouraged from entrepreneurship is they feel burnt out. They get stretched so thin because they don't have the right support system. And I think human design can help sort of fast track what kind of support you need. I absolutely need people like you on a team that I build for it to go quickly and for me to be healthy. I can actually do it, but I will be sick.
How does the human design framework correlate with other constructs like those that key in on strengths or different personality types? Do they work together?
The biggest difference I would highlight is that something like a Myers-Briggs or an Enneagram, those are self-reports. That's how you see yourself. The results will depend on what you're self-reporting. And that's not bad. That's incredibly useful. And there's a reason that like career coaches use it and things like that. I think that's a major difference in which I'm not saying they couldn't be used together. They're just not the same. Human design works very thoughtfully with astrology because astrology is talking about the transits that the world and the community is going through. And that's very fluid, right? Because day to day, I mean, if you pulled up astrology charts for today, they'd be different than yesterday and all of that. Whereas human design is fixed for your birth. and that's just fixed in you. And so when you look to see how your fixed design is interacting with the external chart of what's happening right now in astrology, I think that can be really, really useful. That would be my favorite pair.
This is so fascinating. But what's really getting me thinking here is how interesting it is to me that you're using a framework that is body focused, given your history with your body failing. I'm not sure if we covered this. How were you first introduced to human design?
I do think that there's a lot of irony because I'm a licensed clinician. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would be working within a framework like human design, I think human design hadn't come into my life yet, I would be like, that is so not me. That is not peer reviewed. I don't think that I would have been available to using a system that requires me to stretch my understanding of the world in the way that I was taught to understand the world, the way that we've accepted our interactions with the world. We're all very disconnected in a lot of ways from the earth. And I think that I've always been very much drawn back to grounding in the earth. That's why I was so drawn to working with animals. You have to be very present in a very different way than we're taught. So I believe that I brought that into my world already, but it was still pretty intellectualized, except when I was with the animal. That transferred to when I was working with people as a clinician, except when I was in the room with the patient. Then I was in my body, I was with the patient. But when I was talking about it, in order to get other people to validate it, I had to talk about it in clinical terms. I started out when I was in a very analytical framework of therapy because that was helpful to me when I was all up in my head. As I got older and my body became something I had to attune with in order to live, I had this very odd relationship with my body. And I think my physical failings caused me to need to figure out how to read and listen to my body so differently in order to still accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. Because when I was very physically able, I would just figure out how to do it because I was so physically athletic. And when that was taken away, I had to be more creative. And I think that led me to an openness to knowing that I could understand my body and the bodies of others very differently. So I was not exposed to human design until a few years ago. I was expanding some services in that second company, that one, the 0 to 7 figures one. I saw some people in a different industry using certain tech, and I wanted to experience it. I signed up for some sort of service where I was able to talk to this woman, but she asked me if I had ever heard of human design, and I said no. And she said, you would like it. You should get into it. It was a really funny story because I went home, I looked it up, I put in my birth information, and I got a chart out, and I was like, this isn't me at all. And I don't know what happened, but something in me before I just shut it down was like, look again, make sure you got your birthday right. And I hadn't done the AM or PM correctly. I had put in AM and it was a PM birth time. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll run it again. It'll probably be the same chart. It's the same day, completely different chart. I read it and I was like, this is exactly me. This is wild. I think at that point, I was so open from all these other experiences in my world that I was like, well, this is amazing. And I just knew. And part of human design is getting in touch with your authority. And I didn't know the name for it then, but I know what happened was my authority, which is splenic, it's very intuitive based, went on fire and was like, pursue this. And so I just dove in because I was curious.
You've obviously experienced a lot of success along your journey, and we've mentioned a couple of times about this business that you've built from zero to hero. But what about some of your failures? Do you have a significant failure that stands out? And if so, how did you navigate that period of time?
I have started so many businesses. First of all, don't hire a coach who their only business is the business about coaching business. Find someone who has built businesses, because if someone has really built businesses and scaled them, they have built them and shut them down like I did. They have built them and they never launched, which I have done. They have built them and built them out and launched and spent $30,000 on said build out and launched it and then closed it down because it wasn't right. I've done that. Then they've also had some successes. So the business that went 0 to 7 figures and through the acquisition process and all of that. It's called AGC, Aspen Growth Coaching. The coaches there are just incredible. At the same time I started that business, I thought it would be fun to start a few businesses and compete them against each other because then I would know which one was the best business. And so I did that. The second choice, because I had three, the second one that I put probably more financial infrastructure in that first year, but less human power, went all the way to launch. But the question that I had between AGC, which succeeded, and this one, which I launched and shut down probably 6 months later, like it just didn't feel good. The difference was AGC, I did like I had built other businesses. I used my personal and professional network, and I did a lot of bootstrapping, boots on the ground. This was at the sort of height slash peak of when digital marketing was really, really coming. Facebook ads and Instagram ads. And there was this narrative that I think has persisted that you could just create evergreen marketing materials and then people would come. I had never engaged with that because the first business that I built that was successful, but I shut down because it revolved around my energy, existed before Instagram existed. So I didn't have a sense of this. So I was kind of curious. I didn't feel overly attached to it. I was just like, I wonder if that will work better. I know I can do this other way, but what if I put money into having professionals build something for me? Will that gain steam faster? And so I intentionally did both builds. The one that I knew was old school, the way that I had always built. And then I did this other one and I got a build out of it. And I did get some clients out of it. It wasn't just me, there was another coach, but I hated it. And I hated the feeling of it. And that's because it went through a firm, distilled me and the business and my vision, and then came back out towards my clients. And I hated how it felt. I hated how it felt. I hated how there was this machine in between me and my clients. So I walked away, and it was over $30,000 that I did not have. It took money out of my house. I had just been through a really traumatic divorce. I had incredible chronic illness. I was on like surgery 1 of 3 in that period of time. I was drowning in hospital bills, and I had leveraged everything for these businesses. And this one I had put the most financial in. And because it didn't feel good, I walked away. And what I learned, that money was what it took for me to be sure that I didn't want to enter this new age of business building in the way that is still sparkly and what everybody feels. I want to build human-centered businesses where people connect and they're old school in the way that we engage because we want to work together. I want to pay you and you want to come for my services. I just needed that experience. And it was a relatively fast way to lose $30,000, but it was also a relatively fast way to learn that the way I had been building businesses pre-Instagram was the way that I still wanted to build businesses. So yeah, maybe the best $30,000 I've ever spent.
I keep hearing this theme of curiosity, and it definitely sounds like that is your fuel to keep trying new things and seeking new things out. What are your top pieces of advice or words of wisdom as a CEO, as a successful businesswoman and entrepreneur to help people identify opportunity and then move past the barriers, which could include fear or fear of losing $30,000, to accelerate the opportunity that they found into action and growth?
I have a very specific human design, as does everybody. So I didn't know about human design when I dropped that 30K, but in retrospect, I can put a perfect story around it. My profile, so everybody has a profile in human design. It's 2 numbers. The first number, it's very much your forward-facing personality. Second number is a little more in your unconscious, your body. A lot of people don't overtly get in touch with that until later in life, if they ever do. It's worth learning about because it's not as obvious. So my first number is a 1, and it's all about research, and it's all about curiosity, and it's all about learning. My second number, the one that's more unconscious and body, is a 3, which is all about experimenting. All profiles are 2 numbers, and they all have some kind of dissonance between the 2 numbers because the 1 in me loves to be prepared and loves to know everything. That's why it's insatiable curiosity, because I want to know, I want to gain all that information, and I want to be prepared to be successful. And then I've got this 3 over here fucking around and finding out that just wants to toss money or risk or whatever at it. And that 3 really thrives on making mistakes, because then I get to come here and I get to talk about it. And maybe someone else who doesn't have that profile gets to learn without dumping $30,000 into a bad build. Even if I had done the exact same business that AGC was built as, but I didn't have that proof that I didn't need to lean on the modern ways of building a business, I might have never been so committed to being fearless in my old school analog ways. Because of that, I knew I could do it because that 3 was satisfied. That's a place in your human design chart that I would really get curious about, because those 2 numbers are super helpful and they're always at odds on some level. It's like the joke of human design. But if you can play with it, it actually means that not everybody should take those big risks in the way that I did. They have their own path for finding success. And then the second part of that, strategy and authority being in alignment. So strategy being how things come into your world, how opportunities are presented, and authority being how you decide which one is for you. Those are 2 other things that are in your design and available. And if you can really learn how to do that, then you know. And so even the failure is almost like pre-designed. And so I think if everybody can get really clear on their strategy, their authority, and those profile features, it just gives you such a lovely container within which to take risks that stop feeling like risks.
So bottom line is what works for you because of your design may not work for me because of my design. And I think
Exactly.
this is such an important aspect of this conversation. I think because we are so inundated through social media and other things to really live in this world of comparison. So my success has to equal XYZ, and it has to look like ABC, when in fact, that might not be the case because my design and the way I get there is so much different than someone else.
Yeah, this is why I'm much more comfortable being labeled a mentor than a coach, because I feel like to direct and to coach is to say, like, I know how to do it and I'm going to teach you how. If I have a generator client, I am not going to teach them to scale in exactly the same way that I would scale. They get to learn from my mistakes. They get to learn from the lessons and sort of the qualitative stuff, the richness of my story. If I were to coach them on exact moves, those moves would probably look different than my moves. The story, the mentorship would be the same, but the exact moves would be very different because a generator would not find the success in the way that I have found success as a projector. So to just have a playbook that everybody has to follow for a successful business is, to me, just totally irresponsible. It's also not aligned with good clinical practice. It's not aligned with all the other sorts of trainings that I have. Like, this is not just human design. This is being an ethical provider and guide and caretaker. When it comes to concrete language, it's really easily accessible. I think human design is super helpful because it's like, no judgment. You want to work more with your body and energy than I do because you're a Manigen. And if we told you that you had to like rest as much as I would like to rest, you would be like, I'm frustrated all the time. I already slept all night. Let's go. Because when you sleep, you wake up rested. Whereas a projector, they're not getting their rejuvenation from their night of sleep. It's from more of the active rest. Whereas you drain yourself during the day, sleep, and wake up and are ready to do it again. And those are fundamentally different. And so if we're just even talking about sleep patterns, we have to have a different business. There's no negotiating that.
Oh, Alex, it just makes so much sense now. My whole entire life, people are like, Sue, you need to sit on the couch and slow down and chill. And that is so uncomfortable. I have never figured out how to actually do that.
And what's so beautiful as a manifesting generator is you probably produce something, are super wildly alive and creative, and then you're ready for the next challenge. And that's a beautiful thing. What I would be supporting you is to make sure that when you were ready and desired something new because that creative energy was overflowing and the old thing was boring, that you had set up your system in a way that it could live on without you, so that you didn't have to throw everything away in order to get your need met. From the onset, you'd come to me with an idea, I'd say, great, let's start from the beginning planning for you to not do it anymore. And you'd say, what? That doesn't make any sense. We just started. And I'm like, yeah, but you're going to get bored because I know you, because I've looked at your design. So let's just build it in so that you can still get some income or some credit or whatever it is that you want out of it once you're bored. And that would be so different than someone with a design that maybe wants to be in something for 30 years. Like, I would build that totally differently with them.
So, speaking of different things, and in your words, doing some things, what's next for you?
It's July and Rev, my newest project, is out in the world. And I am on a personal and professional mission to redirect the flow of capital from those who do harm with it to those who heal with it. Because I believe that the people that do beautiful things in this world will do even more beautiful things if they have money. And I think the people who end up with money are often the people who aren't doing the beautiful things in this world. I'm working with so many people to either leave their job that is very specialized. So this is sort of like high achievers, the high performers that maybe have been using all of that energy in a high level corporate setting or something like that, and spread those skills elsewhere. I'm also supporting, 6-figure, 7-figure existing businesses to either scale further and double down on their values and double down on their humanity. So there's a lot of ways that you can scale and reinvest in humanity while you do it. A lot of clients that I work with are already in that 6 or 7-figure business mark, but they're looking to reinvest the profits that they're making to be clear on their impact with their team, with themselves, with the world. So Rev exists to set up all those structures using everything from human design to my clinical experience to the entrepreneurial experience to a beautiful group of professionals that I've put together that can support with everything from HR to CFO duties to bookkeeping and everything in between. We're kind of like that old school incubator, except instead of spreadsheets, you get a human design chart.
Have you had a lot of buy in on
Yeah.
this?
I actually soft launched this, and without any work on my part, this is when you know you have a good idea. I had so many inquiries that I put up my very first scheduling link, and I had 10 people signing up with these beautiful business ideas in 48 hours of having that scheduling link up. So yes, it's been beautifully well received. And I actually think that's because we're at a real inflection point in this world where people are tired of giving their energy and their money to the mysterious corporations above. And I think we're all really wanting to serve each other and be in relationship. And this speaks to that because we need money still. I don't believe capitalism is going to fall in the very near future, but we can get into the belly of the beast and we can redirect that flow of capital to the good guys. And that's what we're doing. It's a Robin Hood mission, really.
With this Robin Hood mission, what legacy would you like to leave?
I want to leave a legacy of people who are so brilliant and would have to dim themselves within the constructs of capitalism to receive success. And instead, I want them to have so much success within the system so that we start redefining what playing this game looks like. Because for so long, playing the making money game was either you were one of the bad guys, or it was like a dirty word where the healers and the helpers and the artists don't want to say that they want to make money because then they're what? A sellout or not in it for the right reasons. I want those people to be able to afford to get a massage and go on a vacation and eat organic food and have healthcare. Like these are basic things that we should do to enjoy our lives. And so the more capital that I can redirect, the more I know that then they're going to build businesses that do that for their team and their clients. And we're going to have this huge, massive ripple effect that otherwise would stop with a paycheck.
So, Alex, when you look at all that you've done, everything that we've talked about, all the things that you've achieved, what's the one thing that you're most proud of?
I'm really proud of my ability to make meaning of things that objectively sucked to go through. I think that is probably my superpower. I came into this world with a lot of privilege. I have white skin and blue eyes and got a college degree and some things that were in my control and a lot of things that were out of my control. have occurred, lots of loss that came with how disruptive that is to a life. Instead of feeling worse, I feel so grateful that those things occurred because the richness of my life, I don't think would be there without all of that. And I'm so grateful that not only have I been able to turn that into new chapters and success and gratitude for myself, I get to pay that forward to so many other people. That is just so fun. I actually don't think it matters what business I'm in or where I live or any of the other variables. That's just fundamental to my life path.
Is there anything that I did not ask you that you want to share?
There's something that keeps coming up, which is that everyone sort of gets stuck in what they do. What I've learned is it's all about why you do it. And I think that is probably why I appreciate human design. It's why I appreciate entrepreneurship. It gives me so much freedom to focus on that mission, the redirecting capital from those who do harm with it to those who heal with it. It's all about why I'm doing something, and the rest I can figure out. And I hope that for everyone that's listening.
Thank you, Alex, for joining us today to share your incredible knowledge and your insights. Your advocacy for us all to stay curious and to become better versions of ourselves is so inspiring. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Be sure to share this episode with someone you know who could use Alex's words of wisdom. And then join me again next week on the Two Gals and a Mic podcast as I chat with another amazing woman who's doing extraordinary things. I'll see you then.